The word no is a psychological sledgehammer. From the moment we are children, it represents a barrier, a reprimand, an immediate halt to our desires and our autonomy. As adults, that reaction doesn't disappear, it simply mutters under its breath. The moment you look at an employee, a partner, or a colleague and point out their blunder directly, their psychological defenses shoot upward like an iron gate. The human ego is designed to protect itself, and a direct correction is perceived by the brain as an existential threat to its status and competence. You might think you are simply fixing a spreadsheet, correcting a strategy, or adjusting a behavior, but to the recipient, you are launching a direct assault on their intelligence. They stop listening to your advice and begin constructing a fortress of self justification. They look for excuses, they shift the blame, or worse, they yield externally, while harboring a silent, bitter rebellion internally. This true masters of influence know that the straightest line between 2 points is almost never a straight line when dealing with human psychology. If you want to change someone's behavior, correct a catastrophic mistake, or steer a project back on track, you must learn the rare art of calling attention to people's mistakes indirectly. This is the velvet revolution of communication. It is a method that allows the other person to realize their own error, preserve their dignity, and fix the problem eagerly, all while believing the correction was entirely their own idea. When you eliminate the friction of direct confrontation, you bypass the ego entirely. You aren't forcing them to look at their failure. You are guiding them to look at the solution. This subtle shift transforms you from a rigid supervisor into an inspiring mentor. Dale Carnegie meticulously studied this phenomenon in the actions of history's most effective leaders. He observed that ordinary managers rely on the blunt force of authority, using words that sting and commands that isolate. But extraordinary leaders understand that human beings are creatures of emotion, not logic. We are driven by a deep, unyielding need to feel significant and capable. The moment you strip away that significance through a harsh, direct correction, you lose your leverage. By learning to structure your feedback, you create a conversational environment where the other person feels completely safe to learn, adapt, and grow. You drop the hammer, but you do it with such supreme finesse that the other person only feels the gentle guidance of your hand. See, imagine the absolute power of being able to reshape the actions of those around you without ever sparking a single argument or breeding a drop of hidden resentment. It requires you to consciously override your own primitive impulse to shout, "You are wrong." It demands that you master your own pride so that you can effectively manage the pride of others. The silent rebellion isn't about letting people off the hook for sloppy work. It is about choosing the most sophisticated, high retention psychological path to ensure that the mistake never happens again. It is the realization that the ultimate test of your social intelligence is your ability to deliver a reality check without breaking the spirit of the person receiving it. You came. The moment he replaced the blunt weapon of direct correction with the subtle art of indirect guidance, he realized he could shape human behavior without ever fighting a battle. To understand how this psychological mastery operates in the real world, we must look at a striking historical example that Dale Carnegie loved to share. Charles Schwab, the legendary steel magnate, was walking through one of his massive steel mills one day at noon, when he noticed a small group of his workmen standing directly beneath a large, unmistakable sign that read, "No smoking." Okay? An ordinary manager, armed with raw authority and an eager desire to enforce the rules, would have marched over to those men, pointed a rigid finger at the sign and demanded, "Can't you read?" They would have shouted, threatened them with a fine, or perhaps even fired them on the spot to set an example. And what would the psychological result have been? The workmen would have put out their cigarettes while the boss was looking, but the moment his back was turned, their compliance would morph into a burning, venomous resentment. They would have felt humiliated, small, and targeted, leading them to look for subtle ways to sabotage production or slack dot off later in the day just to reclaim their bruised dignity. But Charles Schwab was not an ordinary manager. He possessed a profound, cinematic understanding of human behavior. He didn't walk over to attack their egos, he walked over to connect with their humanity. He didn't mention the sign at all. Instead, he stepped into the circle, greeted the men warmly, and handed each of them a premium, expensive cigar. Then, with a knowing, friendly smile, he looked them in the eye and said, "I'd appreciate it, boys, if you'd smoke these outside." Think about the sheer elegance of that single sentence. Schwab didn't say no. He didn't criticize them for breaking a company rule. He didn't make them feel stupid or disobedient. Instead, he gave them a gift, recognized their importance, and indirectly called attention to their mistake. The men instantly knew exactly what they had done wrong. They knew that he knew. But they didn't feel attacked. They felt deeply respected. They saw that a multimillionaire, a titan of industry, cared enough about their feelings to protect their dignity rather than crush them with his power. They put out their cigarettes, took the cigars, and went outside with a sense of immense loyalty to a leader who treated them like men, not chess pieces. This is the power of the indirect approach. It is a behavioral cheat code that completely flips the script of traditional management. When you draw attention to an error indirectly, you are actively preserving the other person's pride. You are offering them a psychological escape hatch, allowing them to correct their course without having to admit defeat or suffer public embarrassment. In a world where everyone is desperately fighting to feel important, the person who allows others to save face becomes a rare magnetic anchor of trust and authority. Okay? By offering a bridge of respect instead of a wall of condemnation, he discovered that loyalty is volunteered, never demanded. The mechanics of this indirect approach rely heavily on a single, massive linguistic trap that traps millions of people every day: the word but. Consider how most well meaning people attempt to deliver feedback. They start with a compliment, saying something like, "We are truly proud of your work this quarter, John, but your attention to detail on these financial reports has been sloppy." The moment the word but leaves your lips, a psychological alarm blares inside the listener's brain. The human mind instantly recognizes that the initial praise was nothing more than a hollow, manipulative wrapper designed to soften the blow of the real attack. The compliment is completely erased from their memory, and they are left feeling defensive, manipulated, and resentful. You have tried to be polite, but the structure of your sentence has completely defeated your purpose. And to execute a truly silent, seamless correction, you must master a subtle, one word shift in your vocabulary. You must replace the word but with the word and. Imagine rewriting that exact same interaction with this new psychological blueprint. "We are truly proud of your work this quarter, John." And if you apply that same incredible work ethic to these financial reports next month, your accuracy will match the high standard you've already set. Notice the profound shift in emotional gravity. By using and you are not erasing your initial praise. You are building upon it. You are not highlighting a failure. You are outlining an exciting continuation of their success. John does not feel attacked because his ego has not been bruised. Instead of defending his past mistakes, his mind naturally shifts to meeting the future expectation you have laid out for him. You have successfully called attention to his shortcomings, indirectly allowing him to step over the mistake and move directly into the solution. This technique is remarkably effective with sensitive individuals, proud rivals, or defensive employees who view any form of direct criticism as a declaration of war. It allows you to maintain absolute authority over the standard of excellence, taught without ever having to play the role of the hostile enforcer. You are no longer standing across from them as an adversary, shouting down their errors. You are standing beside them as a collaborator, pointing toward a shared peak of performance. By learning to phrase your corrections as extensions of a person's existing strengths, you bypass the psychological friction that slows down progress, ensuring your ideas are implemented with enthusiastic momentum rather than reluctant compliance. Okay? The moment he shifted a single word in his vocabulary, he realized he could redirect human energy without ever creating an enemy. The ultimate extension of this indirect philosophy is to step back entirely and dot let the power of selective questioning do the heavy lifting for you. When a critical mistake is made, the natural low level instinct of an untrained leader is to issue a declarative statement of error. This is wrong, go fix it. But a declarative statement of error is an uninvited invasion of another person's cognitive space. It robs them of their autonomy and forces them into a submissive posture. If you want a correction to stick permanently, you must stop giving answers and start asking targeted diagnostic questions. Correct? Instead of pointing out a flawed section of a proposal, a master or social intelligence will approach the creator, sit down beside them, and ask, if we present this specific section to the client, how do you think they will respond to our pricing breakdown? Or what do you think would happen if our competitors launched their campaign 2 weeks before this date? Okay? By shifting from an accuser to an explorer, you are doing something mathematically brilliant within the human brain. You are forcing the other person's mind to actively simulate the failure scenario on its own terms. They look at the data, track the logic, and suddenly the realization hits them. They see the flaw clearly, but because they discovered it through the prompt of your question, their ego remains intact. They don't have to defend themselves against you because you didn't attack them. They naturally look up and say, I just realized this timeline leaves us exposed. Let me rewrite this part. This is the peak of human influence. You have corrected a catastrophic blunder, elevated the quality of the work, and simultaneously increased the other person's confidence and critical thinking skills, all dot without ever saying the word no or pointing a single finger of blame. You have allowed them to completely own the victory of the correction. And when people are guided to discover their own mistakes through your questions, they do not feel managed, they feel empowered. They develop a deep, unshakable loyalty to you because you are the rare leader who makes them feel smarter, sharper, and more capable every time they walk out of your office. Okay? By choosing to guide their thoughts rather than force their compliance, he watched them eagerly dismantle their own mistakes to match his vision. This entire philosophy culminates in a profound transformation of your own personal charisma and leadership presence. When you commit to a life free from the blunt trauma of direct condemnation, you stop being a reactive critic and become an active architect of human potential. You begin to see that human behavior is not something to be beaten into submission with rules, arguments, and sharp correction. It is a delicate instrument that responds beautifully to the subtle touch of emotional intelligence, indirect guidance, and unshakable respect. And by allowing others to discover their own errors, by replacing but with and and by steering human minds with selective questions rather than aggressive commands, you create an entirely new reputation for yourself. You become the individual that people desperately want to please. In any organization, family, or social circle, there is always a shortage of people who can correct a course without creating a wound. When you master this silent rebellion against the standard toxic patterns of criticism, you instantly rise above the noise. You build an unshakable empire of influence because people feel safe, elevated, and deeply understood in your presence. Okay? As you close this chapter and step back into the arena of your daily life, remember the ultimate lesson of Dale Carnegie's timeless wisdom. The people you interact with every single day are starving for importance, recognition, and dignity. Do not be the person who steals that from them. Dot. Under the false pretense of being honest or correcting a mistake. Wear the velvet glove. Master the quiet power of indirect influence. When you protect a person's pride while gently guiding their actions, you unlock a level of loyalty and excellence that raw authority could never achieve. The blade of criticism only leaves a trail of broken trust. The bridge of respect creates a legacy of permanent impact. Drop the hammer for good, master your tongue, and watch as the world willingly reshapes itself to match your vision. Okay. As he stepped forward into the quiet confidence of mastery, he realized that the truest power on earth is the gentle strength that lifts others up while moving them exactly where they need to go. Right.